of Education to order. Ms. Egan, could you please take the roll?
Mr. Bouban is excused. Mr. Coughlin?
Here.
Mr. Fry?
Here.
Ms. Fitzgibbon?
Here.
Mr. Jackson?
Here.
Ms. Sorg?
Here.
Mr. Sullivan?
Here.
Ms. Tarkinian?
Here.
Ms. Genter? Here. President Dirks?
Here. Thank you. At this point, the board would entertain any public comment from anybody who would like to address the board. If you are interested, please come on up to the podium and give us your name. And I don't see any takers. Is there? Oh, excellent. Sorry. Oh, okay. Yeah, if you could give us your name and your address, we'd appreciate it.
My address is 200 North Monroe Street. I heard a rumor, I hope it's a rumor, that some staff did not participate in some training relating directly to student safety, specifically Alice training and mandatory reporter training. As a parent, I find that concerning because when my child goes into a classroom, I expect that the teachers are trained to keep her safe. So if that is the case, as a parent, I would like to know who did not participate so I can opt my child out of those classes.
Because this isn't on the board's agenda, we can only discuss things that we've notified the public we're going to discuss. We can't respond. I realize that is unnatural sounding, but that's the rule we have to work with. I can ask
I'm
Dr.
bringing this to your attention.
Sure, I appreciate it.
If you have not already addressed this, and this is something that did actually happen, I'd like you to address it.
Sure, and what I was going to say is I can ask Dr. Ansager to follow up with you. I'm sure that he'd be able to respond fully. Is that okay?
I think all parents have the right to that information.
Sure.
When the hub tells us that that the district is going through Alice training, my daughter's already come home from school one day and said she did not have her regular academic class because of Alice discussions taking place. I'm assuming that's happening with a trained Alice person, a staff member. I would assume that other parents are working under the same assumption, and if that is not true, I think all parents should be entitled to get information.
Okay, thank you. We'll follow up.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that wanted to address the board? Okay, thank you. Next up is a legislative update.
Thank you, Scott. So I sent a legislative report to Becky, and it looks like it's all in bold. So I hope you don't think I'm yelling at you, but actually, when I was typing this up, it is sort of maddening. It's all pretty much there. I think one of the biggest things right now that's coming up this week is there is a public hearing on the well, it's called the Teacher Protection Act. It's been nicknamed that. But there are no organizations that have actually signed on to that they agree with this proposed legislation. Most people have registered that they are not in favor. So you may hear a little bit more about this. We'll see what happens. It's supposed to make teachers have some, more control over the safety, but what it really looks like it's happening is it's singling out certain students that have some emotional and mental health issues, and it's really not the right way to handle those. There's lots of links you can click on this and look at it. There's also another public hearing set on the new teacher and administrator licensing rules. That is, DPI is doing that. They've scheduled 5 hearings. One of them is going to be here in Madison, but they have allowed for public comment through January 31st if anybody has anything to say, but I'm sure it's more to, the staff and people that are dealing with licensure that would have things to say about that. Tomorrow is executive session by the Senate Government Operations Technology and Consumer Protection Committee, chaired by Senator Strobel. And they're going to be discussing the 2 bills that would limit the school board's ability to seek a community referendum to fund their system. We've passed, I don't remember, did we pass a resolution on this, or write a letter, or both? I can't remember.
I think we did both.
But all of our legislators and these folks are very well aware of what our stand is on this, so I'll just keep you posted. They just won't let this die. The rest are just some information for you, read at your leisure. And if you've got any questions, please contact me.
Any questions or discussion on any of that?
Are we gonna send any letter for the teacher protection ad? I see the phone number, school district, or
Well, I mean, that's, I guess, up to us. I think it's not at that point yet. No one has signed on. It doesn't have any co-sponsors. So I think we just kind of we're a little bit more in a wait and see. I think they're going to be completely inundated this week with a lot. I mean, you just look at the list of people that are against this. It's going to be pretty overwhelming. If you have some time, I'd tune into Wisconsin Eye if it's on and see, watch it. But when we get to that point, we'll have to discuss it.
thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, then next up is our Spotlight on Learning, which has to do with the high school's North Star. So, Isabel, are you leading that?
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, so we are the North Star, and we are the Stoughton High School news magazine. And we title ourselves a news magazine because in addition to news stories, we also cover areas like sports and entertainment and features. And last year we presented to you guys around the same time about what goes into the production of our issues. And today we're just going to talk a little bit more about who we are and some exciting things that we have coming up in the future. So who are we? We are the North Star. And we're composed of 19 students, and among those 19 we have 11 editors, 3 of which are standing right here, as well as 8 staff writers, and among those staff writers we have 2 head artists, and we also have our lovely advisor, Ms. Riley. And the North Star is a very competitive organization. Last year we had around 30 applications, and we were only able to accept 8 people. So the people that get accepted are definitely very invested in North Star, and we all work really hard to uphold the tradition of excellence that people have built for us. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Colin to talk a little bit about our mission.
So we have a mission statement at the North Star: give voice to the voiceless, seek truth and report it, act independently, and minimize harm. And overall, we want to make our community a kinder, more aware, and informed place. And with every story we write, we want to take this into account and how it affects the community, and not just the high school, but Stoughton as a whole, and even surrounding communities. And we have a quote here from a former staff member, or a former North Star staff member, and current Stoughton High School staff member, Mr. Holzer. As a teacher, former student at SHS, and as a former member of the newspaper, I've seen and felt the impact the paper has on many different levels. As a teacher, I've observed my students' eagerness and excitement to read this award-winning periodical. Writing has always been a source of pride for the school and the community. The paper provides a viewpoint that is student-led and student-driven that their peers can be proud of. The North Star is as important to SHS as the Norwegian dancers or any other academic or athletic program they've had.
Cool. I'll introduce myself quickly. I'm Mitch Osterhaus, one of the editors on staff of the paper. North Star falls into the class of co-curricular, meaning it's a class and an activity. North Star is a full-year elective course open to sophomores, juniors, or seniors. As aforementioned by Isabel, there's a very competitive and multifaceted application process that applicants must go through to become part of the staff. Each month, staffers will produce a 28-page news magazine, as Isabel has distributed to you, I guess, each month. And they fulfill the high standards of editors like us, as well as our advisors surrounding. To be on North Star, it requires a wide range of skills and tasks, such as advanced interviewing, news, feature, editorial, in-depth sports, and review writing. It also entails photography, analytical business skills, as well as group discussion and planning skills, and the ability to organize drafts and interview notes while meeting weekly deadlines. This course is recommended for college-bound students with potential self-motivated and creative, and computer skills are also highly recommended as that's the means by which we lay out each page of the paper. So each month there's a minimum 14-hour work requirement, and those are on 3-page nights. As I stated, the layout portion of the paper is very computer heavy and time heavy, and our page nights are when we take time to lay those out using a software program called InDesign. Back to Isabel.
So the North Star serves 1,200 students and staff, and we also deliver to the middle school because we like to get some excitement in them for when they get to high school, and hopefully they'll want to join the North Star as well. And we also distribute to local businesses, which are places that we advertise with. And the North Star being a student-run organization, we do everything that goes into the production of the issue. And in addition to that, we do advertising. So we go out to businesses in town and we see if they want to advertise with us, and then we're also in charge of laying out the ad pages and collecting the ads from them. And we receive a $3,000 loan from the district, and it's our goal each year to try to pay that back through advertising. And for the first year, and I think quite a long time, we're actually really close to reaching that. So that's really awesome. And then we also distribute to community members, and those community members are usually people who we've interviewed for like stories that we've written, or like past advisors. Mr. Wallner is a really important person for the North Star. He's a past advisor, and he gives us a lot of great advice.
So, we at the North Star every year enter several competitions for our writing. This year, at the Kempa Fall Conference, we had there were, or we entered 500.
I think there were 500.
There were
Yeah.
500 nice in total. We didn't enter that many. With 23 schools participating, and we got second place, which is pretty impressive coming from a small town. And we recently entered the Wisconsin Newspaper Association contest, and we're entering NewStuff, and we entered the NewStuff, which sounds confusing, but they're different things. And yeah, we won quite a few awards, and I think it's something we can all be proud of.
Cool. San Francisco. This is exciting. So from April 11th to the 15th, we're going to be taking a group trip to San Francisco to attend a National Journalism Convention. Out of our staff, there are 15 students registered to attend. Thus far, we've taken part in some fundraising activities. For example, we worked concessions at a Badger football game earlier this year. We've also set up stands at things such as homecoming tailgate, and we've helped orchestrate parking for a football game, which basically entails just directing people to various parking spots around the high school. In the future, we hope to fundraise through things such as art contests, as well as letters to alumni asking them for monetary donations. The objective of this trip is to gain journalism skills, both experience with professionals, participate in competitions, and be immersed in a talented group of young journalists. I've also been told by Ms. Riley there are dances, so that's always a pro. We'll also take part in a little bit of sightseeing, as is the case with most travel type things. Sightseeing's cool. San Francisco is a really neat city, so for us to be able to see some of the icons of the city would be really cool. And ultimately, at the end of our trip, we'd like to take these skills back home to Stoughton and help make the community a better place.
So that's all we have. If you guys have any questions, we can
Questions from Allison?
Just one comment, I know you said that it was, for a small town to be second place, I think, for any town. That's really impressive. It's really good work. I love your publication. Thank you.
Anyone else? Donna?
I predate Mr. Holstetter as an alumni, and the North Star was very much on the edge when I was in high school. So I am very impressed that you have kept the tradition going, and my kids both were on the paper. So really great experiences, and just thank you very much for. I know it's a lot of work. I paid for a lot of pizza page night.
Thank you.
Anyone else? John?
Yeah, so I just got onto the school board a few months ago, and so I've just started recently reading your magazine in depth every time we get one, and I'm constantly stunned at the maturity that your editorial staff shows in tackling really difficult, I don't know, topics that I read about in I don't know, bigger adult magazines. And I went to a Big Ten college. I went to Purdue, and our newspaper, we didn't have a magazine, but our newspaper was written at a lower quality than, and at a lower level of thought than what you guys accomplish in this magazine. So you do a fantastic job, and I'm sure that the high school benefits from being able to read and think deeply about some really difficult topics, especially your cover story this month. So you guys do a great job. Congratulations.
Anybody else? Yoli?
I totally agree with John. It's very good quality, and I love the magazine too. I have a question. It's about how do you guys do the selection process? I mean,
For new staff members?
yeah, and because
Yeah.
well, it's also an elective, you know, it's an
Yeah,
elective
so how it
class.
works is around March or April, we send out applications for anyone in the school can apply, and we, as an editorial staff, and people who will be returning next year, we spend a really long time. They both remember we spent about 3 weeks just going through, and we interview each candidate, and then there's a really long decision process, and by the end we have usually a list of 8 to 10 people. Last year we had 10 initially, but 2 of them were unable to do it. So that's basically what goes into it. It's definitely really hard to decide because there's a lot of really strong candidates.
And just speaking from someone on the outside, but guiding that process, last year we were lucky to have Mr. Ashmore come in and talk to the students about how he selects staff at SHS, and we blinded the applications last year, so students were looking at them, not knowing who they were, gender, can I take them this year, they will pick them themselves, that was a lot, but just so that we were getting more even kind of students, so they worked incredibly hard to discuss what we were.
Anyone else? Joe?
So I would echo all the compliments. You guys do really a fantastic job. And one of the things that I noticed often is that you're very brave in what you will write about. And I'm wondering if you get blowback ever about any of those things and how you handle that.
Yes, a few of my opinion columns have sparked some debates. One of those was last year, November, I wrote a column about religion, and I think a lot of people were very supportive of it, but there was also a very big thing that happened on Twitter, and I know Twitter is a great way to spread things, but
We're finding that out.
yeah, I think we do our best to not retaliate to any criticism we receive. We have a format for people to respond to articles through letters to the editor, but it can be kind of difficult sometimes to not send a snarky comment back on Twitter, but we do our best to be professional when people criticize us, and we also realize that a lot of the criticism that we receive is based on opinion, and that we don't hold any opinions better or higher than anyone else, and that our readers are just as entitled to share their opinions as we are.
I guess I'm wondering too, do you get blowback like from parents or the community, or you?
We've had kind of lower number of letters to the editor or from phone calls this year.
I think, there are definitely some things that we write that parents will probably find questionable. I personally haven't had any negative feedback from parents. I've mainly gotten positive feedback from parents who they read the issues that their children bring home and they also really enjoy them.
It's really supportive environment, really. I mean, it's been great school to have a great community thing, so, yeah.
I'm glad to hear it. Good, thank you.
I get occasionally, what was it, last month's cover was?
There was something, yeah. Oh, it was
The smoke, yes, and so I'll occasionally get sometimes a half dozen or so calls from people that I encourage them to contact the staff directly, to voice their concerns. Some are more reasonable than others. I don't know how many contact you, but occasionally when they print a controversial topic, I'll get a few calls.
Yeah, and we also operate under something that's pretty rare for student publications, which is no prior review. And that's something that I think past supervisor Mr. Tripp he fought really hard for us to get no prior review. And basically that's just, we are able to write anything that we want, and administration doesn't look at anything you write. They're not allowed to say what you can and can't do. So that's a really beneficial privilege that we have that not a lot of other schools benefit from.
Anyone else?
Before we part ways here, I think I speak for myself and the entire staff in thanking both the board and the district as a whole for their continuous support of what we do. It's very rewarding both for us and I think it's good for parents in general love being in high school. So I extend thanks.
Well, I wanted to say too that I've only been reading the North Star since my oldest son started high school, so that's about 10 years. Certainly not as long as Donna's been involved, which goes back probably to Watergate.
Quiet.
But, no, the first time I looked at a copy of the North Star, I was really impressed and continue to be impressed for some of the reasons, like John said, that you guys take on topics that probably a for-profit publication wouldn't dig into for a lot of reasons. But I also, and the quality of writing is fantastic, but, you know, the thing that you said, Isabel, I think the administration deserves some congratulations as well for trusting you to not only go into controversial things, but to handle them well. You know, you could easily go off the rails with some of the things you guys write about, but you don't. And I commend you for that, and I commend the administration for letting you do that too. So, thanks, and I hope as many of you as possible get to go to San Francisco.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so next up, Dr. Ansager's report.
Thanks, Scott. A couple of things. The district participated in a book drive to raise or to collect gently used books for the schools and the children of Houston who were affected by the flood and all the weather down there. I'm proud to say that our 3 elementary schools combined collected 1,666 books, and they made 750 bookmarks to place in those books. And so those, along with the 4,300 books that were collected throughout the community, were boxed up, put on a truck, and are on their way to Houston now to be distributed to kids in the Houston area who lost pretty much everything, and give them books that they can take home and that they can read. So really proud of our kids, of our staff, and our community for reaching out. You know, when you look at a district the size of Stoughton, where it's, you know, 6,000 books that we're sending, what a great accomplishment. So we're proud of that. Another thing that we are proud of is our automotive program has achieved accreditation through the National Automotive Technician Education Foundation. Only 19 high schools in the state of Wisconsin have received this distinction, which brings the credible prestige and recognition and overall program improvement to our high school and to our automotive program. Our tech ed teachers, but in particular Pat Henson, has been working for years to get this accreditation. And in fact, you can read all about it in this month's publication, because there is an article about it. So read on about this, but this is something that is great for our high school, great for our tech ed, great for our automotive program. So we're proud of that as well. And then the last thing I had was a week from today is Staff Development Day, where staff will be selecting various breakout sessions to continue their professional development. The administration and I are serving the morning meal. We have eggs and sausage and potatoes and the works that we are starting to serve staff. Our custodial staff gets to work about 6:30, so we're firing up the serving utensils at 6:30, and we'll start serving starting at 6:30 for any staff member who wants to stop by for a hot meal before we begin our day. So stay tuned for more fun. And then next week after that, there's a group sitting here that is going to the state educational conference. Myself and Becky Egan will be joining them. That's always a great experience and great breakout sessions for that. So that's what I have.
Okay, questions about any of that? Okay, thank you, Tim. Next up is the consent agenda.
I move approval of December 18th, 2017 regular board meeting minutes. I move approval of the December 14th, 2017, January 23rd, 2018 check register as presented. We would like to say thank you to the following individuals and groups and move approval of their donation to the district. $27.50 from Kigansa Working for Kids for the Aldio Local Nature Center field trip. $25 from an anonymous Fox Prairie student's grandparent to be used for meals for a student in need. Assorted warm weather clothing including coats, snow pants, mittens, hats, and boots from First Lutheran Church member for students in need. And related cash donation budget adjustment for $50.50. I move approval of the 3,000 Healthy Classroom Foundation grant for support in creating an outdoor educative setting. I move approval of the annual River Bluff Middle School 7th grade enrichment field trip to Eagle River, Wisconsin from February 26th to 28th, 2018 for Purple Bluff, and February 28th to March 2nd, 2018 for Gold Bluff. I don't like this one. Move to approve the retirement of Judy Singletary, Director of Curriculum and Instruction, effective June 30th, 2018.
The consent agenda has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Donna. Any questions or comments? Well, I'll say that I'm really sorry to see Judy leaving. But maybe at some point you can tell us what your next move is going to be, because I think we'd all like to know. Well, I mean, you must have some plans. So any other questions or comments about any of the consent agenda? All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The consent agenda is approved then. We have several discussion items. First up is the annual athletics update from Mel Dow.
Good evening. It's great to be back here and sharing some information with you regarding our students, our athletes, and our athletic programs. We should all be aware of some successes that our kids and teens have been having on and off the field of play, as well as we know some of the challenges that have been faced off the field, all of which have brought our kids, our teams, and even our conference closer together. This year, so far, we've seen multiple swim records broken, our most successful football program in recent history, recognition for our character education and leadership training, and not to forget the kids that are continuing their academic and athletic careers. You should also know that Stoughton was identified as one of the state's first 15 awards of excellence schools for leadership, sportsmanship, ethics, and integrity. Just this afternoon, our students listened to coaches discuss the character traits on striving for improvement and selflessness. Tonight, I want to share with you some of the things that take place outside of the whistles that are just as much a part of what is involved in an educationally based athletic program. As a member of the WIA, you have to understand the structure and the process that we must follow to maintain eligibility. The Wisconsin Interscholastic Athletic Association is a voluntary, unincorporated, nonprofit organization that oversees the interscholastic athletic programs. In 2017 and 18, there are 512 membership schools, including all senior high schools in Wisconsin's public school systems, statewide schools, specialty schools, as well as religious and independent schools. WIA conducts an annual meeting each year that provides its membership the opportunity to amend the Constitution, bylaws, rules of eligibility, as well as address special topics. For changes to the membership's constitution, bylaws, and rules of eligibility, a vote of the entire membership is required at this annual meeting each spring. Changes to sports season regulations are advanced through the democratic committee process. The Constitution contains information regarding the association as an organization. The bylaws encompass information relating to member schools' responsibility concerning WIA rules and eligibility. The rules of eligibility themselves embody information relating to the relationships of the student athlete to the high school and to the WIA. The Board of Control has the ultimate authority in determining the outcome of sports season's rules, recommendations, and regulations. Among the advisory groups that provide the board are Coaches Advisory Committee for each sport, the Sports Advisory Committee, comprised of school athletic directors from each of the 7 districts, the Advisory Council, consisting of school administrators from each elected district, as well as the executive staff. Other groups with advisory responsibilities include the Medical Advisory, Sportsmanship Committee, and the Officials Advisory Committee. The season regulations address, among other topics, the definition of sports season, participation, contest control, and tournament procedures. I bring this up to you because it's good to know that all the WIA rules that we follow are really decided by us as membership schools. The WIA Executive Office is very similar to the school district structure and administration, where they are responsible for enforcing the rules that have written by elected officials and members of their community. The WIA's community is its membership schools. The other piece of this is, for the last 4 years, I personally have been serving on the before-mentioned Sportsmanship Committee, and recently have been elected to the Sports Advisory Committee as a gender rep. I probably served these positions to give Stoughton better representation throughout the process. My first meeting for the Sports Advisory happens to be next Monday. What I'd like to kind of roll into next is talking a little bit about some of the hosting opportunities that we've had here at Stoughton. So I'd kind of like to wrap it up with sharing this information with you. As I've reported to the board in the past, we host as many as 200 plus events here at Stoughton per year. Some of those are tournament events that have been recently presented annually by our business office. In addition to our regular events and the tournaments we host, we have become a dependable school to host WIAA events. Since I presented to you last, we have hosted WIAA events in track, swimming, tennis, football, and volleyball. I personally like hosting these events here at Stoughton because this gives us an opportunity to show off our facilities, our programs, and most importantly, our people. In addition to the WIAA events, we host specialty events. The selection process for this is simple. If our coach asks, I do my best to accommodate them. There are opportunities to provide unique experiences for our students. These include before-mentioned tournaments, but also non-competition events like this past Dane County Athletes Committee. Matter of fact, a recent request came from our girls basketball coach. The Badger Conference was needing a host for the first Badger Basketball Conference Challenge. And this weekend we happen to be hosting that event for the Badger Conference, where the 16 teams in the Badger Conference will be playing a game here on Friday and Saturday night. This is quite an undertaking and could not have been done without the support of our youth programs, our boosters, our coaches, and our administration as a whole. With that being said, a plug is I hope that you're able to attend at least one of the games. Our girls happen to play Saturday night at 6 o'clock as we hold the number 2 seed right now in the conference. Speaking of hosting specialty events, many have asked me about the recent wrestling event that was held up at the university earlier this winter. This event was with many connecting points. Yes, we did take advantage of my personal connections that I have with the wrestling program up there, and the fact that we have alumni who are former Badger coaches and athletic administration up at the university. But it was done with a bigger vision than just that. For over 10 years, the university facilities have been closed off for special high school athletic events outside the WIAA state championships. And this event has allowed us to establish a relationship with the university. As a result of such a successful event that we held, this keeps the doors open for more options in the future, not only for Stoughton, but hopefully for other school districts as well. What do all these events do for our students in our community? It gives our community and our kids a unique educational experience, an opportunity to update facilities with pool funding from our budget, boosters, and our tournament accounts. An example of this would be things like our new track course, because we have a full complete set that we acquired through the track sections. The score tables, and one upcoming project that we're working on currently right now is a closed circuit TV system that's being installed in the pool to accommodate the large crowds so people don't have to miss their swimming events and can watch it in the lobby area. Most importantly, the updates that keep us relevant to our neighboring districts. These events bring people to the district and our buildings. These people themselves, or someone they may know, may be moving into the Madison area, and we want to show them what Stoughton has to offer. Knowing all this, in my humble opinion, I would say it's hard to argue against that our athletic programs are not close to one of the top things that market our school district besides our state report card. And all of that, it's great to represent our community, our district, and the school with the ability to bring people in and show who we really are. And personally, I'm thankful for the professional courtesy and respect to show off Stoughton on a daily basis.
Some questions or comments from anyone? John?
Yeah. We'll be talking about this issue that I'm about to, or not issue, subject that I'm about to ask you about in a minute here. But next week at the state convention, I'll be representing our school board at the WASB, what do they call it? The Policy and Resolutions Committee, where we vote on policies and resolutions. And there's one specifically, or specific to the WIAA, and it is in favor of WIAA autonomy. You mentioned that you guys are an autonomous organization, and that the membership decides the rules for yourselves. The resolution, as it is going to be presented, reads, "The WASB supports the autonomy of WIAA to govern itself and to determine regulations and standards for athletics and student eligibility while taking into account the input of its member schools. The WASB opposes legislative efforts to impose explicit or implicit mandates on the WIAA or its member schools." The way that you described the benefits of having autonomy would lead me to believe that it's, in your opinion, that, that resolution be good for you guys, or, okay, cool. That's, I just wanted to verify, so, thanks. Mhm.
Anyone else? Frank?
Mel, can you talk a little bit about health data? And specifically, I'm concerned about, I'm curious whether we collect data about injuries to student athletes, particularly related to concussions.
We use that through our contracted services through the health system. That information is of course confidential because it's not the records of that. Yes, they keep very close records on each of the students' athletes' injuries that are reported. And I say that because sometimes in this day and age, that students, families don't report it. Albeit it's a step toe to something a little more severe. But as you read in the most recent article in the North Star, Sam Athletic Trainer is outstanding and preparing concern for the kids is second to none. So when she notices something different in the student athlete's performance or just personality, she
And now, there are certain sports or all sports that they are required to do the concussion test and the,
all of our contact sports are required to take the impact test, and all programs are offered the availability to do so.
can you explain what that is?
Cross country
Yep.
examples, one that we don't require. So impact testing is simply a neurological test that gets your baseline of your brain action. And in the event of concussion, it is what's used to see if you have returned back to normal. Through cognitive testing. So we require all of our student athletes every other year, is what the time frame is, and they get their baseline. And on concussion, they need to return back to that baseline score before they can return to participation. And with all our state laws and requirements, that portion is not required, but seeking medical clearance to return to participation is required.
Medical clearance from whom? From the trainer or from the?
No, a medical professional. So,
You mean a doctor outside of the district? Yeah.
yeah.
Like a family physician.
Yeah. Does that answer your question, Frank?
Do we have statistics on how many of our athletes have experienced a concussion sorted out by sport?
Yes, that's in our annual report.
Okay.
Now, I do have to throw a disclaimer that Sam left on maternity leave last year in the spring, so spring information is not complete because our site is not the tracking as it was. So Sam's report was in the period of 2 days. And that's in our annual report.
That's good. Yeah, I'd be grateful to see that.
Anyone else? Okay, well, thanks very much, Mel.
And Mel will be back, like he said, in June, he presents the annual report with the information throughout the year, including the concussions and all of that, so.
Is that where we hear about wrestling scholarships and stuff too?
Thank you, Mel. Okay, next up, program reviews.
Just going back to the end.
We are about to conduct a program review. Look at that. We're about to conduct a program review, and Tim suggested that because our most recent program review was 2 years ago, it might be a good idea to talk about what is a program review before I come back to tell you the results of our program review. A program review is intended
to look at a program, and I'm really explicit about that when I talk to educators, administrators. It isn't an evaluation of individuals. It isn't an evaluation of a school. So it really is looking at a program. Here I have the purpose of the program we are about to review, so that you can see kind of the overview intent to determine to what degree does Stoughton meet our stated mission in implementation and ongoing support of Marquette community-based program. Goes on to say what we want for our kids and how might we learn based on others' feedback or a compilation of feedback, how we might continue to grow a particular program. So this is based on a research piece from 1975. At that time, it seems like a really long time ago, at that time, school districts were required to do program reviews routinely. They were accredited by a regional accreditation. We call little symbols on our doors that said we were accredited by a particular Northwestern. While we no longer practice that in the state, it was a really good model to look internally first and then bring others to come and review both our information and information that others would bring to bear. So here's a typical list of what we will do in a program review. I'll say that every program review is unique, just like children and teachers are unique in some way. I'll try, if you have any questions about that, I can be more clear about that. I'm going to walk you through what each of these aspects of a program review are, and then also with every aspect, you'll see an example that was taken from one of the program reviews we've done in the last 10 years. The very first one was our most ambitious. The first one went out since I was here. It was quite ambitious. We looked at 4 different programs all at one time, which was wild. So we started out with a planning document. This one came from our K-12 science program review, where we have to plan months of work so that we're making sure that we stay on track, we're gathering the artifacts, we're arranging for people to come and help us. It's what do the educators do. Typically this is organized by a small internal team of people who go out and collect information, ideas from their colleagues. But you can see it's many months in the making. That internal team makes a point of gathering artifacts, data, looks at standards. So we present every aspect of our program, be it world language or science or Core-K. We look at all of our work over a period of time. We look at the standards that drive our work. We look at the data, we disaggregate data, and we collect this compilation of information, artifacts, data, a review of standards. Sometimes it includes recent articles in the field. So that we, first of all, an internal group, would take a look at it and say, how are we doing? What do we see as our strengths? What do we notice as either a concern or as a missing link, or again, it's different for every review. So this is just, the array of what you might see in this folder of things is diverse. In the process, we solicit external expertise so that we aren't just looking at what we always do. It's important to bring experts in from outside. We choose experts from DPI and from CISA2 based on recommendations from stakeholders. People in world language, we were able to get both world language and music. We were able to get experts that speak statewide at conventions that our educators happen to have contact with. So that was, and then they ultimately did some professional development it's important who we choose and what kind of credential and expertise they bring to the table. But we identify between 3 and 5, I think, is the most, except for CTE, when we did 4 reviews at once, 3 to 5 reviewers to come in and look at our compilation of artifacts, data, information that we're sharing. And then they also do some interviews, review some surveys, so that they can get a really broad picture of who we are, what we do, what's important to us. The reviewers agree to do this, and ahead of time they get all of the data and the artifacts and all of that information. And so then they do a lot of pre-work so that they know, they feel like they get a handle of who we are and what we're doing. And then when they actually come and spend 1 day with us in the district, they have opportunities to interview stakeholders and make observations. Most of the observations will be a flavor. You can't, observe like you as a principal observing for an evaluation kind of in a half a day. Because they'll go to several different places and meet several different people. But it's important for those reviewers to come in and get a flavor of what Stoughton is and how we deliver any of these programs. So these are the 3 ladies that agreed to come to our program review in February. So this on-site review, when we invite guests into our district, we have a pretty detailed and pretty rigorous day planned for them. They are assigned, each of them are typically assigned something different. So they're not all gathering information from the same people at the same place. And they bring their lens and their ideas and conduct interviews and talk informally with people. So here's a kind of schedule that one might be involved in. In this particular program review, it was launched because of parent concerns. And so we had a parent focus group in here for the music one as well. Stakeholder interviews, so that's a situation where they come and interview people with them. They've read all the information and there's some questions that they feel like they don't have the answers to. And so they kind of pursue those. Almost always, in all of the other program reviews, would interview building principals, would interview educators for a broad view, would go to classrooms and see what things look like, not as an evaluation of the building and not as an evaluation of the educators, which I say a lot. It's uncomfortable for our educators to have outside evaluators come in and look at what they're doing. It feels they're going to catch something or they're not going to like something. And as many times as I say, this is not an evaluation, they just look at me and say, like, Julie, this is our baby. And we're coming to. So again, I just keep reiterating that that isn't part of a program review. This came from World Language. We would frequently offer stakeholder surveys. This would have been a student survey. For K, we won't be doing that. We will be doing educator surveys and site surveys of the people there involved. The program reviewers then, they have this rigorous day. They come back together about noon after being out and about. We feed them lunch, and then we kind of leave them to their own devices for the afternoon. They talk about their observations. For the most part, reviewers, while they may know each other because of professional intersections, they typically they don't know each other. And so they have to kind of get used to each other's expertise and lens and where they're coming from. And then they share what they've seen and observed in their reading. They share the interviews and the observations they made in the morning and talk through
based on these findings and observations, what recommendations they might make for our evolution. And if they have strategies for us to try, they can make those for us also, and it'll save us some time. This is then submitted, I'll get to this. This is then, they've made some recommendations. We invite at the end of the day people that were involved. So maybe the educators, maybe the principals, maybe anybody that wants to come back here, and the programming or the external reviewers then share some of their findings. It seems to reassure people, oh yeah, you didn't list a bunch of things that we're doing wrong. So they identify strengths, they might name recommendations, but for the most part, it's just reassuring for the people involved. They go off and then write a summary, a personal summary of their findings. So they kind of have this group idea, but they also write a personal summary of their findings and observations and recommendations. They submit that to me, and I consolidate that. I take their names off of it, and I put it all together into an organizing document. So it might look something like this. This one came from a CTE program review from one of the, looks like maybe it was the overview one. So when I took all of the documents together, there were some recommendations for improvement in communication, in collaboration, in leadership. In any of those fields, you start to synthesize and see patterns. And so then this goes to the internal, all of the people internally. We've got people recommendation. They may have given us strategies, or we may have to do that research on our own. And then we set up a timeline for the responsibility to pursue and implement that. At this point, there are sometimes recommendations, this is not common, there are sometimes recommendations that are not something we want to be involved in. As the Stoughton Area School District, or as the team for the program review, may have recommended something that's either not feasible, not appropriate, not let's see, I'm drawing a blank at what one of those might have been. Maybe to have a separate environment for students with disabilities, because it'd just be easier to manage everybody all in one place. We would not consider that recommendation, nor would contemporary people recommend that. But we have the autonomy to say that's not appropriate here, we're not going to take that recommendation. So then we have our strategies, we generate those, and a timeline of which we try to achieve that. And then finally, we have action goals, and what is it we're going to do? And they're increasingly written as SMART goals, not so much in 2009. So we have a plan for what we're going to do and how we're going to evolve. As a result of that, any number of things might happen. In music, for instance, we have some planning with an expert from the field, where we have lots of, we weren't really a system of music teachers, and this expert, all of them actually named that as a concern. And so we brought everybody together and said, we're gonna make this work. We're going to have a common vision and purpose and mission in music, so that we can all be singing the same song, so to speak. And so that work happened. We did have one day, and then we also spent several days together in the summer, where I would say today we see much more cohesion in the music team. And so that is the sequence of a program review. Our next program review is in 4K. It happens with external reviewers will be there on February 1st. I would say much of the work has been done in the community gathered for this program review. So I'll open that up for any questions you have about a program review or curriculum 4K.
So it's probably premature then to ask much about 4K since you didn't. My only question is, because.
I know stuff about 4K, if you're interested in that, but it's.
Well,
not
this is
clear.
just, this is a little bit more of a unique situation because we partner with community providers, so there isn't this internal bringing everybody together to talk about actionable goals and all that kind of stuff. So how is that, how do you foresee that happening with the 4K? I mean, I know we have some internal people that are responsible for coordinating that, but I mean, have you thought this through, like how we get the input from the actual providers, and are they gonna want to participate?
I hope so. We will conduct a survey with site administrators and local educators. A parallel survey, probably maybe do the same survey with service providers, so a social worker, special educator that works in the same environment. Lots of opportunity for specific feedback and then narrative ideas that would come to us as well. It's a small group, and so we're very careful to say the email address isn't associated with the survey. There's no, I don't want them to be concerned about giving feedback. Again, it's a program review, so we're reviewing our district's implementation of the design of this program. And so it isn't an evaluation of the educator or the 4K district administrator has a responsibility to work with 4K site administrators who are responsible with the educators on an evaluation annually of are you meeting our expectations, are you meeting your expectations. So that's where that evaluation piece would come in, with sites. But this is about the implementation, how is the program going?
Right. And is this their first program review of the 4K?
They had had a review. I wouldn't say it was this formal of process, but 5 years ago there was a presentation to the board about what was going on in 4K, how the implementation was going. So it's about 10 years old right now.
Anybody else? Steve?
Judy, you mentioned that the information is pretty much collected. What type of information from the 4K program, the artifacts and such, did you guys gather? And the other question I have is, what's the schedule after February 1st for completing the rest of the work?
Well, the external reviewers have, I try and get information back in 2 or 3 weeks. And so as soon as that comes back, and it's from 3 people, so that shouldn't be impossible. Get that back, it gets synthesized quickly, and then probably on the Friday, the next Friday, 4K educators have some Fridays that we do professional development with them. They bring students on some Fridays. And so the next one of those, after we get that done, we'll meet with those people because they're the ones that will help us drive what we want to do about this recommendation. So that could be a group of 4K educators and service providers from the district and that would be involved. Those recommendations then following that, depending on what strategies they want to use. Is it professional development? Is it site visits? They get to go see the other. I mean, they collaborate a lot. So I'm not making things up. It really is very driven by the participants about what we want to do next. It really should be pretty complete before the school year is over. Get this done in February, by March, we should be able to meet and then set our goals.
And the artifacts?
The artifacts we have, we start with our program design and implementation plan and keep going back to that. Is did we do what we said we were going to do? We have student achievement data, we have demographics for the last 8 or so years to segregate it so that people know who our population is. We have the professional development that goes on, and 4K educators have got significantly more professional development than our K-12 educators get. We look at curriculum resources, there's a lot of probably some of this that we don't have, but we have a very long list of things. Most of it related to the program implementation on doing this. I can get you that list of, it's done.
Okay. Thank you.
Done, go ahead.
I just went back and I looked at program reviews that we've done in the past. So 2011, we did a world language review. 2012, we did PD and music. 2014, literacy and science. So is there a rotation? Do we have a schedule set up? So, like you said, one of these, the music, there was a parent thing. Did you say that there was a parent concern that initiated the review? So what is?
I wouldn't say it was one parent. It was a kind of a barrage of concerns and complaints and angst, and it was coming to principals, to administration. I was like, we've got to figure out what's going on here. And so I launched a program review, and I wouldn't say that the review cured anything, but certainly the action in terms of result of that is much more comfortable now.
So do we see any others coming down the pipe that you might want to see done?
Things that sometimes spur this. In science, we have a new set of standards that we were looking at, and our elementary schools we have gone through a program for a long time at elementary, and it was decomposing through the science word. So we really need to get everybody back on board and lined up. For the most part, in math or in reading, we wouldn't do a program review so much as a resource review, because it's really about the curriculum materials that we're using, the group how we're having out in those 4 areas. I'd be very tempted to do a social studies one, but successful how to do that.
And there are other things, so like Judy said, social studies review is a possibility. At some point, CTE is 10 years old. At some point, it's kind of like policies. At some point, it's worth doing a periodic basis just to get, as things change, as the world changes and different things, to go through a cycle of them. So I would anticipate that we would be looking at doing some of the ones that we've done in the past. Again, just to see what's new out there, how are we doing, how have we done since the last one, and implementing those, and are there, what's our next strategies, etc. Yoli, do you have a question?
So, what is the district, or what are we expecting from, thinking of student demographics and everything that's going on right now? What are we expecting for 4K? I mean, is anything that you're expecting coming up from this review? Or?
Something that I expect to see from program review. One of the things that prompted this particular review is that there are other places that want to be 4K sites. So we have currently 5 4K sites, and that has changed a little bit over time. So we needed to be clear about why you are a 4K site, what our expectations are of becoming a 4K site. Do we have the capacity to have more than 5 4K sites? Because there's kind of a tipping point of we don't want to take 4-year-olds away from one site that's already a community partner of ours, get them to start a new site, because that doesn't really help and we haven't gained access to 4-year-olds then. So I think that will be important for us to see, and I'm always interested in what the experts in the field have to bring to light. DPI is an amazing resource in a 4K community-based approach. They have a lot of resources for us, including tools to evaluate and tools to look at our program. So I think that they probably draw on that. I don't prescribe that for them. Let's see what else might I expect to see.
Can I have a
Yeah, go ahead.
And this is just out of curiosity. I remember when my older was in 4K, they had like 2 days of going, like trying kindergarten before going into kindergarten. And I don't know when that went away. I thought it was a great idea because he was kind of like ready and he was excited. And then my second child didn't have that opportunity. I remember he was so kind of scared, didn't know what to expect. I'm just curious knowing why that is not happening.
Primarily it was because the kindergarten children couldn't go to school that day. So we were taking kindergartners out of school to allow 4-year-olds to come and visit. And we have an obligation to our kindergartners to give them all of those days of school. 4K and 5K are not radically different. The curriculum that we use in kindergarten through 5th grade helps to drive the curriculum that we use in 4K. The professional development, again, that the 4K teachers have really aligns the expectations of the district. So the kids might wish to go see the kindergarten, but that visit is was a little bit staged and denied our kindergartners 2 days of school.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay.
I have already sent Steve to be interviewed. If anybody else is free on February 1st, make yourself free. And interested in having at least one other person. If that's something that sounds interesting to you, let's Steve's our stakeholder for the board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have 2 policies that are on the discussion item agenda for tonight. The first is policy 803. Donna?
Thanks. Policy 803, it has to do with attendance, and the only reason this is actually coming to the board is that the guidelines were changed for this policy, not the policy itself. The reason why the guidelines were changed is, especially at the elementary level, they were noticing that some kids, if they were just a little bit late, their parents didn't bring them to school at all. And so they wanted to relax some of those guidelines to encourage parents to still bring their children in even though they were going to be late. And so they worked, the admin team worked on those guidelines, and then they wanted to decide whether they should wait till next year to implement or start them right away, and opted for starting using these guidelines on the beginning of the second semester, which is January 22nd. So this is really just sort of an FYI. This is one of those cases where we say the guidelines don't have to go through policy, but we did want to make sure the board was aware.
Anybody have any questions or comments about that? Joe?
So that the guidelines are in effect, have been in effect or not yet?
These new guidelines will go into effect January 22nd.
So we will take a look at whether it's had an effect
Right.
down the road.
Yeah.
The parents, as I understand, have already been informed that it will be changing. It just was a nice clean break. But it was better to start now than to wait until next year.
Do you have another question, Joe?
No, I guess I would be asking if we don't need to vote on this then.
No,
No.
it's just this is just a
I mean, it's not
FYI.
coming up on
Information.
a second reading or anything.
Nope.
Just,
No.
thank you for making this aware.
We don't make We don't change the guidelines. This is the beauty of the guidelines. So,
I just have a
Oh, sure.
question. I'm also curious. What are the consequences of, I'm always curious about, so after the 10 days of absence, you know, sometimes the child go over, what happened?
well, I mean, Kelly, are you able to talk about that?
We can, I mean, one of the things we can do is we can pursue truancy. It sparks a conversation. Anytime when you're getting chronic absence, it sparks a conversation with the family, because there could be other underlying factors. And so, you know, the principal is usually involved, whether it's a social worker or guidance counselor, et cetera, to see if there's some underlying. We can, as I said, go through truancy, and the law reads, if a student is absent all or part of 10 days, they can be considered habitually truant. And then they can be, if we go that route, the courts could decide to fine the parents if they determine that the parents are contributing to the student being habitually truant. But usually, going to truancy, especially at the elementary level, is a last resort. We try to look at what other mitigating factors there might be, what other things that we can do to get the student to be at school. As Donna said, what they were discovering is with the old guidelines, if they were a little bit late, they were not coming at all because they were considered absent. And if the law reads all or part of the day and you're missing, you're going to be marked absent whether you get there or not, they were keeping the kids home. And our ultimate goal is for the students to be in school. Even if it's part of the day, they're getting something out of the classes they're in and nothing at all.
Yeah, Yoli, also to your question, a truancy referral puts the matter in court, and I mean, one of the remedies that's actually available is the court could take the kids away. That's very, very rare. There's usually a lot more going on with a family if something like that were to happen. But, you know, in theory, it could be, which is a reason why loosening the guidelines up a little bit makes a lot of sense, I think. Just give everybody a little bit more time.
They don't want to go to school. The police will come after us, so you have to go.
It's going to go on your permanent
Well,
record.
if that's what it takes, Yoli.
You won't get a job when you graduate.
And at the high school, you have a little more leeway. I mean, so for example, at the high school, you can talk about work permits. You can talk about, you know, not being able to get a driver's license if you are habitually truant. So you have other things that they want at the high school. So those are different conversations you have depending. The conversation is different depending on the level you're at.
You usually create a plan with parents before you go to
Right.
any.
Yeah,
You're
that,
approaching that 10 days, you meet with the parents, you want to establish with really an important opportunity that your child here and then you come back and see how that things work. So there's a lot of things that go into place before you go to that. But
yeah, that's really a last resort.
Right.
Okay. Anything else on that from anyone? Okay, and then Donna, policy 716.
Yes, so 716 came up just in our rotation of scheduled policies for review, and Paul, our Director of Technology, reviewed it and made some changes, as you can see. One of the big changes was to rename it, to more accurately reflect what the policy is actually for, which is assistive technology. I believe that there is a redlined copy there so you can see how it all changed. It looks like it was a lot, but I mean, it really, the first couple paragraphs were just modified to be more along with practice, and then also there was a couple of things that were added. Any questions on that? This will come up again for a second reading, and we can answer any other additional questions. Otherwise, we'll vote to approve.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, our resolution delegate would probably like some input if anybody has anything to offer. Or John, did you have things you wanted to highlight?
Well, I think in looking through most of the resolutions that are going to be voted on, most of them are pretty aggressive or aggressive wording in the WSB supporting the state legislature keeping control of school districts within local school boards and out of the State House. So I think most of the big ones that aren't just getting rid of, or aren't just targeted at getting rid of outdated resolutions are things like voucher transparency, which the resolution for voucher transparency is one that hopes, or the WASB would like or supports legislation to require property tax bills to include information from the school district in which the property is located regarding the dollar amount of the net reduction in state aid. So that I don't know. These are pretty in line with I think the opinions that our school board has had historically, and Donna's kept us up to date on most of the issues, I think, in the State House that most of these resolutions target. So with that said, if you guys have had an opportunity to review these, are there any points of contention or interest that you have?
I don't have a point of contention, but I am going to be curious, especially about the resolution 1808, the WIA autonomy resolution. I have a suspicion that has a lot to do with mandating that WA, it has a lot to do with just gender and gender assignment in sports. So I'm going to be really curious to see what the discussion is in that room, and ask you to tell us how it all went. This is, when you find out there's 424 school districts in the state and how different each board actually is, I can imagine there's going to be some discussion on this.
Yeah, since I haven't been to one of these things myself, how much discussion should I be expecting for some of these? Is it pretty heavy?
I think that Mr. Sullivan actually voted to, or moved to close a discussion, or once or twice, because he was a delegate once. You just never know. The last few years, though, it's really kind of been tame. It's usually about there was a lot of discussion. I remember once, so there was a resolution about Common Core, and it becomes a debate about Common Core. And they're not passing any sort of laws in that room. It's more about what the policy is of the WASB and how they're going to advocate. It's really difficult for some people to understand that. Some school boards just will really take this they take this really seriously, especially if they're one of the boards that brought the resolution forward. So I read through, it didn't look like they denied anybody's.
I thought there was one.
Was there one? They do their best to try to combine it with something else, or even ask them, did you really mean it this way, and that kind of a thing. But that means they could come back, and if they really feel strongly about it, and bring it up as a last-minute resolution. But usually done in the it doesn't go into the night.
2-3 hours.
But it does just sort of.
No, it is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it can really go. I mean,
It's just really interesting though to hear what the perspective of other boards.
What we've historically done with our representative at the delegate assembly is, you know, you're our representative,
Yeah.
John, so we normally will give our vote by proxy, if you will, to John to exercise his conscience and discretion to express the will of the board as needed. So unless anyone has a problem with that, I would suggest that we follow historical precedent. It's all on you, John.
All right, I'll take notes.
No, it is interesting. I forgot that Frank had done that too. I was a delegate one year. Donna has been,
I've been the delegate every year except for,
well, but then you were on
but then I
the
was on
committee
policy and
itself.
resolution,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I was on that committee twice, and,
Responsible
you
for
have to be
formatting
there.
the agenda, yeah. No, it's not all on
Well, there was a
Donna.
lot of debate, and no, that is actually a really, if you ever have a chance to be on that committee, I would highly recommend it. It is a really good committee to work on. It's 2 full days and a half day, but it is really great discussion back and forth with a lot of other school districts, and really kind of, it's just really good, and fun, actually.
Yeah, I would echo what Donna says about the different perspectives. I mean, it's, you know, a representative from every district in the state, and, you know, there are a lot of differences from one place to the next, so.
And you might even see our attorney, Mike Jelka's usually the parliamentarian for that,
Yep.
so.
Yep. Go ahead, Allison.
One thing, you just, a lot of the things I've been looking through here, like just like the 18-2 resolution, but there were a number of them that it seemed that WASB is looking to kind of really impose a little, or not impose, it's probably the wrong word, but looking more for local control.
Mhm.
And, you know, like when you look at something like hours of instruction, when we've talked about some of the options for possibly like restructuring a school day or something, it would be difficult to do if we did not have control over that ability. So that's, it's a personal interest of mine, is that, I mean, we are elected officials and our community wants our district run a certain way, and that we maintain, and I think that's WASB's
Yeah, I think
position, but.
it seems like these are all at least in the direction of maintaining or reasserting local control, so.
And that's usually how it works too, because districts want to run their things their own way. Yeah, go ahead,
I have a
Millie.
question, I don't know, who can respond, but on the letter E, repeal resolution 419, no, I'm sorry, 418, total compensation increases. Is there anything that is different to what we have been doing? Because
So that, all of these, or all of those A through, those lettered ones, they all fall under that Resolution 1801, which is to repeal outdated resolutions, and they all seem focused on the fact that collective bargaining, with the passing of Act 10, limited, or collective bargaining has been limited since the passing of Act 10, and there still remain rules on the books that pertain to it that are overridden by Act 10. So these all seem in the interest of removing those.
So, but I'm kind of confused with that one, because that seems to say that now the bargaining, which is after Act 10, just on the total base wages, which we've been doing since Act 10, right? It seems like now it can be more than just the base wages?
No,
it
I
can
think,
be-
I think that's just a
Good stuff.
semantic. It's actually, because it used to say that that you could collectively bargain compensation, overtime, premium pay, merit pay, performance pay, supplemental all of those things.
Mhm.
Those don't fall under any collective bargaining agreement now. It is just
Exactly.
base wages. So they're just removing that. And again, this isn't a
Okay.
rule, it's just a resolution that guides the WASB. And because this doesn't apply anymore, they're just,
They're just getting rid of that.
they're
Okay.
just pulling it
Okay.
out, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on the delegate assembly? Okay, well, thank you. We have future meetings coming up. The next regular board meeting is January 22nd. We have a board development meeting scheduled for January 29th. I'm still working on an agenda for the 29th. February 12 is also a regular board meeting. Finance meets on January 22nd. Facilities meets on January 16th. And policy meets next on February 12th. And if you'll remember, the reason that we're not meeting the first Monday of February is because that's when the Pops concert is. So watch out for tickets for that.
And then, before the next board meeting, we've invited first-year, teachers who are brand new to the profession.
Right.
We're having a little reception for them, so I'd like to invite all of you to come over next door at 6:30. Finance will still be going on here. Hopefully, as soon as finance is done, the finance committee will pop over. Just to greet them, it's the time of year, especially if this is your first teaching job, that things start to, everything you have to do, and you made it through your first semester, so it's kind of a congratulations and thank you for everything you're doing. So please stop in for some refreshments and to congratulate them. Also, unless I hear otherwise, normally on the board meeting immediately following the convention, there is usually something on the agenda for those that attended the convention, just to share anything that they may have learned, or saying, I went to these presentations, etc. So normally we have an opportunity for those of you that attended the convention to just share a little bit of what you learned or heard.
Right, so that'll be on the January 22nd meeting, so our next meeting.
Yeah.
All right, well, with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. From Joe, second.
Second.
From Yoli. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, we're adjourned.